So this is a 50th anniversary of the dedication of the church. Now, this is not the church as the parish, but actually the building of the church. And the building of the church has a specific birthday, if you will, the day when it was consecrated. The altar is the place where we celebrate the Mass. We gather around the altar. It's the church itself that becomes the place that is where the people of God come to worship. It's hard to imagine a church without the building. And so 50 years marks the continuation of generations of Catholics here at St. Louis Catholic Church. It reminds us to look back to where we've been and gives us the opportunity to look forward from here as well.
When a group of parishioners at St. Austin's recognized that the community was developing to the north, they looked toward this part of town and said, we need a Catholic church in North Austin. And Monsignor Matoka had a vision for how a parish could grow and become vital. And he used his talents and his charisma to grow this congregation from a small community on the north side to quite a large parish, which was very much almost in the country. When this church was first planted, it consisted of the original building of the church, which is now the school library, and the remaining bits of the property were cotton fields and cornfields. So it was rural.
You know, when I think about the history of St. Louis, I always think of this one photo that I'm fond of. It's a picture of the bishop and 3 or 4 priests that are standing on the actual land where the church is going to be built. And it's from the 1950s, and there's not a tree to be seen. And as far as you look to the north, it's just open prairie. And it seemed like it was so far out in the middle of nowhere. And yet, isn't it interesting that all these years later, the epicenter, the very core of the Austin metro area is Burnett Road and 183. So this place that seemed like it was so far out in the country is now the very center of faith in our metro area. I think that's quite interesting.
The first building that we built was the original church, and it was never meant to be the final church. It was built as an all-purpose building. They had a basement, and that was used as a hall. And then the upstairs, that was where they had masses to begin with. There were, I'm sure, 2 to 4 masses at the time. And as the 60s progressed, they ended up having a mass upstairs and then one downstairs, usually simultaneously. It must have been noisy and uncomfortable. Think of an Easter vigil, standing room only. Plus, it was a space that they couldn't use for community building because they were having masses, so they couldn't use it for potlucks or parties or garage sales or anything like that. So we needed a sanctuary where we could actually worship. And then when this building was built, they turned that original church into a wonderful community center.
In the late 60s, when the community recognized the need for a much larger facility, and of course the Catholic Church was growing geometrically in the community. The Second Vatican Council had concluded just a handful of years before that. And so there was still some confusion as to what should a new building look like to reflect this new vision of ecclesiology coming out of the Second Vatican Council. So I believe that their intention in building this building, first of all, their intention was to build it as large as possible for as little money as possible. And so building it simply but large and with an eye toward a more traditional building struck a balance between what was and what was going to be.
You know, I remember when I was growing up, St. Louis Church inside the building looked quite a bit different than it does today. There was dark wood paneling in the background, and there was green carpet. The whole church was carpeted with green carpet. And it was a little heavy. It had kind of a 1970s heaviness to it. And then Father Larry came and he renovated the church in the 1990s. Whenever I think about St. Louis Church, the building itself, I always think of noble simplicity. It came out of the Second Vatican Council. The church was built just after the council, and there were all kinds of different types of churches being built at the time. There were stadium churches, churches in the round, all kinds of different ideas were being bandied about how churches should look. And St. Louis stayed true to form. It's a Basilican-style church. Very simple. There's not a lot of ornate design or ornate decoration in it. And I think that's one of the things that's so appealing about it, that when you come in here, it's very clean lines. It's a very simple place so that you can concentrate on the mystery of God.
Building this sanctuary, first of all, there was an explosion of liturgical ministries. There was the first formal choir. We had a brand new organ, one of the finest organs west of the Mississippi. And so there had to be a choir to go with that organ. So the music ministry really exploded, as did the liturgical ministries. Here we were bringing in Eucharistic ministers, not just altar servers. We were instituting and installing acolytes and lectors. And this was all new, but then the building of this building allowed other groups to develop. In the 70s, there was an explosion of organization. The men's club started, the women's club started. There were prayer groups and Bible studies, and they were all able to meet in what had been the original church, but now they had a space for that.
The programming here, under the great leadership that this parish has enjoyed, has been the catalyst for tremendous growth of the Catholic Church in Austin. And many churches have looked to St. Louis Parish as being a model. Of course, when the bishop asked me to come to St. Louis, I immediately went into panic and began to consider the implications. This parish was known as the flagship parish of the diocese. Ministry innovations, ways of doing catechetics, the music program, the school being the largest parochial school in the diocese, all of these things together bespoke a congregation that was involved, engaged, very supportive, with great leadership. And I felt like I was having to step into some very big shoes. It's very easy to fall into the habit of simplification and omission and doing enough to get by. And I said, this parish could be an example to others of how excellence in liturgy can contribute to much deeper spirituality, with resulting in greater sense of discipleship. So my vision for the altar servers was, yes, altar serving, but more importantly, ministry. The ministry they offer to the parish and what it offers to them in terms of leadership development. The altar servers, of course, have certain responsibilities in terms of assisting the deacon and the priest at the altar. They are very much behind the scenes in preparation, but they're part of this great liturgical drama that is the reenactment of the Paschal mystery that happens on our altar. So my philosophy again was everyone has a specific role to play that they have ownership over, and that they are encouraged to put their best efforts forward to make it an excellent experience of the worship of God. That's our primary focus, the excellence of the worship of God. If excellence is our standard, then it flows into other aspects of life.
You know, from the very beginning, St. Louis has always been known for excellence in liturgy and excellence in music. Monsignor Matoka, who was the founding pastor of this parish, insisted that there be a pipe organ in the church. And so from the very beginning, St. Louis was known for its music. We had great music directors, always a vested choir, outstanding organists, and to this day, St. Louis is widely known as one of the great places for church music in Central Texas.
There is a real sense of discipleship and ministry in the music ministry here. And we see it across the board in the multiplicity of choirs, in the contemporary ensembles, in the multiple Spanish choirs, which are large and very, very enthusiastic, and also instrumental ensembles. This kind of excellence gives the parish a reputation, and it's also a source of great pride.
You know, when it comes to the music at St. Louis, one of the reasons why it has always been so outstanding probably has to do with its proximity to the University of Texas. There's always been excellent singers who have been able to help our volunteer choristers bolster their sound to make really beautiful music. Many of our organists came from the University of Texas. Our current director of sacred music, Rick Gabriel, is a product of the music department at UT. So I think its proximity to a major university has lent itself to a place where really beautiful music is cultivated in the liturgy.
People who've known that I'm a musician and I love music and I love sacred music, asked me a little bit when I was moving over here to the parish. They were like, "Oh, does your new church have an organ?" And I said, "Well, actually, no, it has 3 organs." I think this speaks to what it is that is this space of St. Louis. It's a space where this sacred music happens. We have different organs that we can be able to use in different parts of the church. The very structure of the church itself, with the high roof and the way that you don't have a lot of kind of soft surfaces so that you don't absorb all of the sound, it means that the church itself becomes a sort of instrument. It becomes a place where the music and the voice resonates there and sort of penetrates more deeply into us. We're so used to sometimes having music and it's just our little earbuds going on and we're jamming off to it and stuff like that. There's a totally different experience when you're there in a church and it's just you feel it in every inch of you. We're designed to be body and soul, and in our body we feel and we resonate with sacred music. It draws us more deeply into something that we can't experience wholly. It's this mystery that we understand in part, but we're still striving to understand it more deeply.
We know that the most important thing that we do as Catholics is worship God. Sunday Mass is the most important thing that we do, and St. Louis does that particularly well. And the most natural thing to happen after Mass is that the excellence and the beauty of that liturgy flows out into all of the ministries of the parish. The school, that's why we say that St. Louis is all about excellence in education. It's so important for a parish to have a school because church is really about the whole person. But learning, for children to learn mathematics and science and the arts and literature and all the other things that they study and participate in Catholic schools is really about making the whole person holy. So not only do we receive the grace of the sacraments on Sunday, but the students receive the grace of God every time they're learning about God's creation in school. We always want to give the very best of what we have to God. And that flows also into the other ministries in our parish, places like the Social Ministries building, where we want to give the very best of what we have to the people who are the most in need.
St. Louis is right on one of the main thoroughfares right through Austin. It's on Burnett Road. And we're a community that, we're connected all to each other, and we have our Catholic faith that unites us together. But any parish, any Catholic parish, its goal is not simply to be an insular community that just does its own little thing within. If you want to pass on the faith to the next generation, don't just sort of say, platitudes and say, nice things about God or about the church or something like that. No, do something and be there and something that you can be proud of. That when you look back on it, you can be able to say, look, this is what we have done, and we did it for God. There's a call, a mandate, that we're supposed to go out. Jesus tells his disciples that they are supposed to go forth, and this is the great commission that he has for them. This should be true for every parish.
The parish was recognized by Bishop McCarthy as having the finest outreach ministry in the state of Texas. And we became, again, a model in terms of social ministry. How does a parish reach out to a community in need? And here is the model for how it can be done.
One of the first organizations in this parish was St. Vincent de Paul, and that started in the 60s, even before this building. And that St. Vincent de Paul is still going today. But there was several people in that group that kept seeing a need for a food pantry, and people were hungry and they needed something more. And so Father Larry addressed that with the dedicated social ministry building. I don't know of any other parish that has that. And we've had a couple of wonderful directors launched it, and now B. De La Rosa's been there for years. And that is the one thing that our parishioners need to know has never shut down during the pandemic. They have been open and giving food and feeding the hungry. And then with the food pantry up and running, the St. Vincent de Paul, then we added mobile loaves and fishes going out to feed the homeless. So it's a wonderful community outreach, and that social ministry building is, they could probably expand.
St. Louis has been such an important part of my life ever since I was in middle school, all the way through my college years, when I was a layman working out in the business world. And then when I became a priest, I never thought that I would ever be assigned to St. Louis. Didn't take me long to say yes when they called me and asked if I would consider going to St. Louis. And then my 5 years here as the pastor, really 5 of the most wonderful years of my life, and I will never forget the graces and really the joy of being the pastor of St. Louis those 5 years. It will always be my home parish.
It was a difficult thing for me to leave a parish that I love very dearly. And I grew up, if you will, much in this parish. I came here when I was in my early mid-30s and left in my late 50s. So I feel like I've left a part of my heart and soul in this place. The parish was a magnificent place of encountering God before I got here, and it will be such in the years and decades to come. I believe St. Louis Parish will always be a strong urban parish as long as it continues to maintain excellence, and that's hard work. There is no other parish in the city that still comes close to this one in terms of the quality of the music and the liturgy. This is a combination of space and as well as tradition. Tradition, once in place, makes it possible for you to grow and develop. And that's always going to attract a certain group within the community. So I believe St. Louis will always be a lighthouse for the Catholic Church here in Austin, Texas.
I mean, as great as St. Louis church building is, and it's wonderful. If you ever come to liturgy here, you know it's a wonderful place to come to Mass. But we know that the word church comes from the Greek word ekklesia, which means gathering of people. So the church is really people. It's you, and it's me, and it's all of the people that come to this wonderful place to not only worship God, but to serve one another in Christian charity.
We always call it the church because this is where the church gathers, but these are walls and floors and pews and altars and that. But it nevertheless is home. It's the larger home where the domestic church gathers on a weekly basis.
Well, this 50th anniversary, it falls onto a period of time that is unlike anything else that we've seen in the previous 50 years or the whole history even of the parish. It's a period in which we have a pandemic, a period in which we've really had to decide what are the ways that we can keep moving forward as a parish, but also keep everyone safe, or as safe as we possibly can during this time. So I think when we see this 50th anniversary, we're seeing a reminder for us, something that helps us see that this moment that we're in right now, even as it drags on month after month, is one small point in the midst of the history of this parish. The very fact that we have a church and it's solid, it's brick and mortar, and it's stone and stained glass, and there's this consecrated altar right there in the center of it. And I think that speaks something of saying, we're not going anywhere, right? That this is not something that, we're just sort of renting a space here and maybe it'll be replaced later by some other business or something like that. No, like we're grounded here. That's come from the fact that we've had decades and decades of a community that has sacrificed and said, no, we want this for our community, we want this for ourselves, we want this for our children, we want this for people we don't even know, but they're going to find a church home here at St. Louis. And all of that sacrifice has gone into the sort of physical reality right here on Burnett Road in Austin, Texas. And so as we hit a 50th anniversary recognizing the building of the church, it should spark our imagination to recognize that we're doing something more than just the actual brick and mortar of the building. It can also be a moment where we not only look back, but we can look forward and say, well, there's every expectation that we're going to have a 100th anniversary as well. And so what's the foundation that we are going to lay where people 50 years from now are going to look back and say, thank God for those who were here before us?